Hi folks, this video is for parents and coaches trying to teach kids how to throw a frisbee. I'm going to focus on the backhand. Even though I'm going to talk a lot in this video, when you're instructing the kid, you need to keep it simple and only focus on one thing at a time. In order for them to internalize one new thing about their throw, they're going to have to get lots and lots of practice. So I'll go through several things that you want them to get, but don't overwhelm them. Only let them work on one at a time. So the first thing that you should get them to work on is the grip. It all starts there. So this is how to teach the proper grip. Imagine that your thumb and your pointer finger are squeezing, like squeezing toothpaste out of a toothpaste container. You put the pressure from the thumb onto this middle joint of your finger. That's the way you want to grab the rim of the frisbee. So when I grab the frisbee, it looks like this. The rim of it crosses over here on my middle finger, and my thumb is pinching here quite strongly. My other fingers can go wherever's comfortable. They can splay out on the disc like this, or they can be curled up if you want. If you curl up all of your fingers, this is a common mistake. It's very hard to control the frisbee. Kids also sometimes want to put their pointer finger out here. This gives them way more control, but it also means they're never going to be able to throw far. So when you're teaching kids a totally new grip, they're going to say that it feels weird, their throws are going to get worse, and they think that they're actually not learning. That is what they're learning. The thing that feels comfortable is what they've always been throwing, and that's the wrong grip. So it's okay. You can reinforce the message. If their throws start to get worse, it doesn't mean they're not getting better. And if it feels weird, that's a good thing. That means they're actually learning something new. So point number one, get them to all do the grip. And when you teach this, if you have a group of kids, everybody should have a disc in their hand, and they all need to hold it up to you to show you that they've got the right grip. Then let them go out and start throwing together. So after they got the right grip, then you just do a couple of practice throws, and they and their teammates can throw for a little while before you then move on to the next thing. Okay, number two. So if they've got that message already, the next thing to teach them is the grip should be tight. Holding the frisbee tight is actually how you generate power, but the wrist should be loose. And this is why frisbee is such a hard skill to learn. When kids grip the disc tight, they also tighten their forearm. And if that happens, they don't get enough spin on the disc, and it turns really wobbly. You've seen those discs that tail off and they're super wobbly. That's because whenever you see that, their wrist is too tight and they're not getting enough spin. But that doesn't mean their hand should be loose. So the lesson is tight grip but loose wrist. And what I do is I get them all to get a tight grip like that. If you see them bend the frisbee a little bit, that's a good thing. So tighten the grip and then loosen the wrist and then have them throw like that. And you'll immediately see a whole lot more spin on their throws. Okay, so after they've internalized that lesson, so that's lesson number two, tight grip, loose wrist. If they've gotten that far, then the third thing you can work on with them is to break at the elbow. So a really common problem kids have is they throw with a straight arm. They think that the frisbee, the arm makes like an arc like this as they throw the disc. So they want to throw like that. I call that the barn door. So when you actually throw, your elbow and wrist need to break. It's more like a whip action. So you hold the disc back like this. You have a straight arm at the beginning. This is called the reach. But then you start to pull through, and the disc actually travels on a straight line. Your arm pulls through. You have to break at the elbow. Eventually your wrist will break too, and you just snap it out. And it's that snap action that we're looking for. So the thing that I teach them is to reach back and break at the elbow. This is the thing to get them to work on. Now, when you're doing this, besides barn door, you might get another characteristic problem. You might have the kids curl up the disc like this. This is also an error they make, because they see the disc spin, so they want to just curl it up and spin it. That is also completely wrong. So when they're winding up, you can look for the curl. This is not what you want. You actually want a straight reach, but you don't want a barn door. The straight reach with a breaking elbow. So that's the third lesson, if your kids have gotten that. Lesson number four. A lot of times you'll see the kids use their arm motions, and they'll change it as they go. So they'll start out in one direction and then end in another direction. Kids throw the disc up really high many times. Or you'll see them often throw out like this, and the disc comes curving back. What we want them to work on when they're learning how to throw is a flat level plane. So you want the disc about roughly chest height, and you want them to travel through and stay chest height the entire time. The disc travels on a plane as you're releasing it. That is what allows you to generate more power as you throw it, because if you're changing your directions, you're going to be losing power. So the disc starts on a plane and travels along that exact same plane. And we want them to learn a straight level throw to start with. Once they learn that, we're going to start to learn how to bend it inside out or outside in and throw in all sorts of other fancy ways. But we want everybody to take those bends out of their throw and learn how to throw on a straight level plane. Okay, now for lesson number 5 is thinking about footwork and the placement of your body. A lot of times kids try to throw when they're facing their direction like this, and this is extremely hard to learn how to throw. This is not an efficient way to throw. So what we want to teach them is, if I'm trying to throw in this direction, I turn that same foot forward. So my shoulders are in line with the direction I want to throw. That's what allows me to reach back properly. And when you're looking at their body position, you also you can check their head. Don't let kids wind up so far like this that they're not at all looking at where they're throwing. If you're making any sort of medium range or short range throws, you never take your eyes off your target. If you're doing a pull in a game, aim is less important. So sometimes the kids take their eyes off the top target. But when any of these throws to one of your teammates, you should be looking at them the whole time. Eye contact is essential. But don't focus on body position at the beginning. Get to that lesson number 5. And then the last thing I'll say is a general one about how to do this with a large number of kids. I work on throwing practice at least in 2 different sections of each practice session. And when you're doing that, you can give individualized feedback. So when you're trying to start teaching the grip at the beginning, you can have everyone together. But once they're practicing any of these things I've been talking about, you can only give feedback one-on-one. It's the only effective way to communicate. So when kids are working on their throws, if there's a dozen kids around throwing, I'll just go around and one-on-one and watch one of them and talk with them. And you might get through 5 kids. But if you're doing 2 sessions of throwing practice each practice, you're going to get through 10 kids. And if you're practicing twice a week, then you're talking about 20 kids that you can give individualized practice. That might be your entire team. So throughout the year, every kid is getting individualized throwing practice every single week. And that's the kind of things that are going to help them get better if you're teaching them these same fundamental concepts. Okay, that's all.